Today on In Her Words, we got to sit down with Attica Locke. Attica is a New York Times bestselling author and screenwriter, but her career plans didn't start that way. This is a fantastic conversation about change and pivot in your career. Changing direction does not mean failure. It may simply mean noticing something you may not have seen before, or realizing you're really good at something you didn't know. Attica is an inspiration and full of great advice. Attica, thank you so much for being here today. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm honored to be here, all the things.
Oh, thank you. You have so much going on. I don't even know where to start. Because you've done so much. You have so much coming up, and I feel like every week you're in the trades about something, a new project coming up, or something that's gone on with Emmys, or something that's resurfacing. So it's super, super exciting to get to talk to you and everything that you've done. But one of the things that really struck me when I was reading some of your past interviews was you kind of had an aha moment that it's okay to change. That you were like, I didn't think I would direct, or I didn't think I would produce, or I didn't think I'd screenwrite. I thought I would only be a novelist, or I thought I'd only be a screenwriter. And how now you are just seamlessly flowing through all of those things. So kind of take us back to that road you thought you were going to be on, and then how you got to kind of accepting all of these changes that have come your way.
Absolutely. I love the question because I do like to say to young people that life is too short to pretend to want things that you don't really want. And I was somebody who was just very, very clear from high school on that I was going to be a movie director. That was absolutely the path for me. I told everybody this. I majored in this. And I find that when we say some early dreams, sometimes they become like identifiers. They become so a part of our identity that there's almost a kind of like embarrassment if you don't want to do it anymore and you told everybody you were going to do it. And I think it sometimes can lock people in place. So yes, I wanted to be a movie director. I studied at Northwestern, and I was a film student there, did a writing concentration, but everything for me was about getting behind the camera. I thought that that was the way that I was going to tell the stories that I wanted to tell. And I moved to Los Angeles after Northwestern. I was a temp, I worked on a sitcom, I did all kinds of things, still very much on this path I thought in my mind. And I did the Sundance Labs, which felt like, oh, the apex. I'm here.
Right, right.
I did the Feature Filmmakers Labs. I came out of that with a movie deal.
Did
That
you,
just
when you were
then,
in your directing mode, were you wanting to do other people's projects, or did you have
no,
any
it was
kind of any
very
interest in
much
doing your own?
hilarious that I'm now an author. It was very much an auteur kind of thinking. I wanted to write I was only writing to direct. I
Okay,
was only
okay.
writing so that I could like have, it was just this feeling of, I guess, total control, which
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
old enough now to go, that doesn't not exist. And really, that's
We
not
hear that a
right.
lot, though. We do
Yeah,
hear
it's
that a
not
lot.
even, I've really learned that total control isn't really even the point. Like, you're doing it wrong if you're doing it with total control. It took me
Mhm.
a long time to learn that. But I came out of the Sundance Labs with a movie deal that then subsequently and very quickly fell apart. And there were just financing concerns. There were, frankly, content concerns. Can you raise foreign financing with Black material? This was like 2000, 2001, 2002. And some of these same issues are still present, but they were really present then. And my movie deal fell apart, and I was very confused and lost and young. I was 24, 25 years old and didn't quite know what to do.
Uh-huh,
And I was broke, and my husband was about to go to law school. And I
uh-huh.
just knew that I could write. I thought I was writing to make my own movies.
Mhm.
But it seemed to me at the time that Hollywood was not interested in my stories. And so I thought, well, I will tell their stories. Okay, I'll make a living writing the movies that they've already decided that they're going to make. No problem. And I
Mhm.
kind of took my little heart and put it in a drawer and locked it up and just said, well, this is what I'm doing now. And I was a professional screenwriter for nearly a decade
Mhm.
with nothing getting made. And I worked all the time. I
Mhm.
sometimes worked two jobs at once. I worked for every major studio, and yet nothing was happening. And I had a kind of existential crisis where I thought, well, I don't know that this is all that there is. I don't think that this is not fulfilling to me, and the money was not fulfilling to me.
Hmm.
So I walked away from Hollywood. I went to my agents and I said, guys, I think I'm done. This
Hmm.
wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I don't want to just write to go to meetings. I'm trying to do something bigger in my life. And I borrowed money on my house. This was 2005. This was a very different
Oh, yeah,
economy. People were doing all kinds of stuff,
yeah,
borrowing money on their house to go on trips. And I thought, well,
yeah.
I can write a book. And I just invented and came up with this whole new identity for myself as a novelist. And to go back to what we started talking about, I was very sometimes sad, sometimes conflicted, sometimes embarrassed. I was like, I told everybody I was going to be a director and I'm just letting it go. And is that okay? And is that right?
Who were your people that kind of helped you through that as you were thinking, and like you said, you were embarrassed and you were upset, and did you fail? Who were your people? You mentioned that your husband was going to law school, so that had to be a super stressful time. 2005 was a stressful time anyway. But who were your people that helped you kind of think through that, and like, kind of be okay with those changes?
I will give the 100% shout out to Dr. Cheryl Arrett, my therapist,
Okay.
who I've been with for years. And she was the one who helped me believe that I could do it, believe that I had a right to do it,
Mhm.
that we would have deep existential conversations about whether or not artistic freedom was my birthright. Was it my
Mhm.
birthright to play?
Mhm.
When I come from, my dad's a lawyer, my mom was a businesswoman, they, were heavily involved in the civil rights movement. I'm black, I come from struggle. Is it my birthright to play?
Mhm.
And she gave me that permission. So Dr. Cheryl Arrett was a huge influence on me, as was my sister Timby, who said to me, just be where you are right now. She said, I don't think Hollywood is done with you. Don't worry about it right now. But I think that might come back around because I did have moments of feeling like, if not a failure, I remember there's a thing with the Writers Guild where your membership becomes like not defunct, but like you don't pay dues and you can't vote.
Mhm.
And I actually went, I don't know, emeritus, I don't know what it's
Yep,
called.
you went into that
I,
category.
and I cried.
Oh
I was
no.
like, what happened? And I was doing other things that I loved. I like loved and loved being a novelist. And
Uh-huh.
yet I felt this part of my identity shifting and it made me very, very sad. And Timby said, that's there for you if you want to go back. But right now you're doing this other thing. Don't worry about it. So
Mhm.
I would say Timby, my sister, my therapist, and my husband who let me do this crazy thing, which is borrow money on our house and said, okay.
Did that ease your concern to have those people that you respect and that you love be in your corner? Just what about your agents and the different people that were like their business was kind of tied to your business? Did you feel supported on that side too?
No, it was not active. I don't support you. Was what? Like they were like, I don't understand. Nobody does this. I don't understand what you're talking
Uh-huh.
about. I
Uh-huh.
remember them saying, this is just going to be a story that you tell at cocktail party that time you tried to walk away from Hollywood. But I did. And I
Uh-huh.
would not say that even with all of that support, it was very, very hard for me. It was a kind of existential crisis of, wait, what am I even doing?
Mhm.
I'm writing a book. Nobody's asked for this book. Nobody cares about this book. And yet I knew within my soul that it was almost, it sounds so dramatic to say this, but it felt life or death for me. It felt like we've only got so much time on this planet and I've got to do something with mine in a way that's meaningful. And right now, Hollywood was not giving me that. So I found something else. I found another way to express myself. And in that was still that same young girl who wanted to be a director because it was really always about storytelling and voice. And so what novels gave me was a much more affordable way to express
Yeah.
my worldview, my voice, to tell stories that didn't require me to get a green light from anyone.
Right, right. It's almost that control that you talked about before. In a different way, you were back in control of the story, of the business, the full business side of it. I think that's really interesting too. Um, and that it was successful, and you were successful. So that, and now what what made you tiptoe back into Hollywood and get and want to get back behind the camera, want to get back into the business side of it, and then back into adaptations and different things of your own work, of working with Tembi, working with other people's projects. Talk about that. You weren't done with Hollywood, so those little that
No.
little bug up there was still that was still going.
Yeah, and I think the answer is both practical and spiritual. Yes, I do think some part of me still missed the medium of drama. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I watch television, I watch movies, I'm a fan of the art form, and I started to see that a lot of the things that I was trying to do in feature films had moved to television. This is the height of prestige TV and Breaking Bad and Sopranos and Mad Men, like all of the really
Mm-hmm.
deep stuff that I was trying to do had moved to television. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
wow, wait a minute, I kind of might want to play. And the other answer is highly practical, that I am a successful novelist who could not necessarily live in Southern California on the
Mm-hmm.
salary of a
Mm-hmm.
successful novelist. I could not, put a kid through school. And so
Right, right.
I was trying to figure out, how am I going to supplement this income? And I thought, I didn't know what to do. I thought about, I think I did join a speakers bureau, and nobody asked me to speak about anything. I talked to people about teaching. I'm terrified to teach. I feel like that is a thing that you don't go into lightly, that you
Right.
must really have both a passion for it and a facility for it that I was afraid I didn't have. And then it was just sitting in front of me the whole time. The answer to how to supplement my income is to, in a sense, go home, simply walk back over to your agency, because nobody had kicked me out. I had
Right.
left
Right.
the party on my own. And I came back and I said, guys, I'm seeing something interesting that's happening in television, and I want to come back into Hollywood through a different medium.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fortunate to have agents ready to welcome me back and help me figure out, like, what's the right home for me.
Mm-hmm.
And my first television job was Empire.
Which is amazing, which is
Yeah.
so amazing. And when coming back and having your novel and having, the experience and everything that age affords us, did you did you look at projects differently? Did you, because the first time around, maybe you're like you said, you're taking everything you can do because you got to pay the bills. And so did you feel like your creativity and you could do things because you could do things differently? You were choosing projects, you knew people, and you had attachments to different projects. Tell us a little bit of how you approach things differently, kind of coming in the second time?
The number one thing that I understood is the thing I had said earlier, which is the depth and breadth of the fact that film and television is a collaborative medium at its core, and it always will be, and that is its grace. So that once I became a novelist who had an art form where you go in a corner by yourself and you just do it all by yourself, and you have an editor, but you're basically the final word on everything. I like that exists in my life, but
Mm-hmm.
that means I don't need television to be that, because it's not meant to be that. It
Interesting.
is meant to be a place that where I sometimes use the adjective symphonic,
Mhm.
that the best of television is you bring in the horns and you bring in the flute and you have the drums, and somehow we make this beautiful music together.
Mhm.
And I think what I think I'm more generous as a television writer and producer because I'm a novelist, because I come into the room with, my way doesn't have to be the way. And
Mhm.
even as a showrunner, there's a sense of, you're guiding a conversation and you're taking good ideas from everywhere that they come from. And I feel like if I were a writer or a creative person where my only outlet was television, I might be I don't know. I might not be nearly as fun to work with. I think part of my generosity of spirit is I'm in the play of group play because I understand it to be group play. And to be fair, I think most television writers in particular understand and love the group play
Right,
aspect of it.
right,
But I think for my personality, I play well when I know I also have my own dolls and my own blocks and my own balls at home that I can
that
play with on
nobody
my
else
own.
can touch. Well, it's interesting. So when talking to writers and that start out as novelists and then having projects adapted, I love to ask the question of um, do they want to be part of the adaptation? Do they want it to be a series? Do they want it to be a feature film? And I'm always surprised at how many novelists don't want to be involved at all. Like, it's almost what you're saying is they're like, I wrote the novel and I don't want to be in that mix, or they don't feel like they can be in that mix. Do you have a favorite way to do you if now that you're on in front of the camera, behind the camera, writing, all those things. Do you have a favorite? Do you like a series? Do you like a streaming series? Do you like a feature film? Do you like a screen working on a screenplay adaptation? Working on do you find that kind of some favorites have risen to the top?
I would say for me, I am a lover of the limited series.
Okay.
Even though I feel like we're in a time right now where the culture of my business, the television business, is to look away from limited series and look more towards ongoing series because economically it
Hmm.
makes more sense. But
Hmm.
to me, a limited series is like a good book. It
Yeah.
just has a
Yeah.
great kind of like, it just is, it contains and exists within itself.
Uh-huh.
I probably, if I had my way, would always make limited series because I just think that that is its own incredible art form.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I think everything is just is being decided by what the material is,
Okay.
and listening to other people. I remember
Uh-huh.
when we adapted my sister's book from scratch.
Uh-huh.
She felt really strongly that it was a movie, and she felt that way because of her love of film, probably
Hmm.
because of her late husband's love of film. I think
Hmm.
that's why she, and I was like, yeah, I see that too. But when we sat down with Hello Sunshine, they made a very strong pitch about how much texture was there in the story that they thought would get lost in a movie. And they were right.
Yeah.
And they were right.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that, and that was Timby's say. I'm glad that she was able to hear that and listen because I
Hmm.
think we made something really special because
Right.
you had 8 hours in there to luxuriate in different cultures and different little moments of all these
Right.
kinds of
Right.
relationships. So I don't know that I've answered the question, but except to say that I swear I love limited series, and I wish the climate would be much more amenable to them.
Yeah, no, and as an avid reader, I love a limited series. I think that because I am plenty old enough to be before all the plethora of limited series where you had this favorite novel and it was a book. I just watched Presumed Innocent on I don't know what it was on Amazon, I think. But thinking back to reading the book, which I was probably way too young to have read that book, reading the book and watching the movie, the Harrison Ford movie that was in the I don't know 90s, and then now thinking, okay, this is now an 8 hours. Yeah, I think there were 8 episodes, an 8 hour limited series. Now it's going to go on, because it got renewed. But just at first I was like, wait, Presumed Innocent, that was a movie. How are they going to do it? And but again, getting to the character development, who all these people were. I mean, there were characters that we didn't even meet in the movie that got to be so. I love the limited series as a reader. I'm curious to you as a writer. I love to ask this question too. So you write your novel, you get to limited series, and that's a beautiful story of your novel in that 6 to 8 hours. Then they want to do season two. Well, there's no season two. There's no book. How do you as a novelist, as an author, what's your opinion on that? When then somebody, and maybe you're involved in it, but you take this one perfect book that you had, and now they want to have season two and season three, like pretty or Big Little Lies, and things like that that happen, and we as viewers, they're great. But I always wonder, how does the writer feel when it's like there's no season two?
I have luckily not actually experienced that yet because it was so obvious, let's say with a From Scratch, there were not going to be any more seasons.
Right, right.
When I worked on Little Fires Everywhere, I think we felt like there's just no way there's another season. It just is what it
Mhm.
is. And ever since then, like I said, the industry has shifted that I don't even like I'm not at a place where I even get to entertain the idea of
Okay,
a limited series. Everything is if you read a book and it's just a book and it's no sequel and there's not you have to begin to think about how would this be an ongoing series simply
mhm,
because that's just the
mhm,
current culture that we're in. And then
okay,
Timby and I are currently working right now on an adaptation of one of my books, which is really a trilogy. And so I
right,
feel like I'm going into things more
okay,
now,
okay.
knowing that they're going to become an ongoing series. So I
An
haven't
ongoing
really,
series, yeah.
but and you asked the way I feel about it, the way I feel about it is I miss limited series. That's the way I feel. Is I wish that we could do more of those because what happens is there are a lot of books that not every book is meant to go it's just meant to be itself.
Yeah,
But look, I don't have all the money that these that Netflix and HBO and
yeah,
Apple
we
TV,
get
it's
it. It's
their
business.
money, so I
Yeah,
kind of get it. But
yeah,
as a
yeah.
viewer, I sure do love a splashy, flashy, exciting limited.
Yeah, no, and when you have a book that is so great and that you love and it's going, I feel like it gets, because so many times, and I'm not the first person to say this, that you read a great book and you don't even want to see the movie because it's just like no way can they put that movie in 2 hours or that book into 2 hours. I think there's so much more. I think that we love a limited series, but
And
yeah, I know.
also, if
Go
I
ahead.
may, I'm also thinking of history. Two of my favorite limited series in the last year were, I believe it's called A Little Light, that was about
Yes,
Meep from who helped the Frank family during their
yes,
hiding from
yes,
the Nazis, and I
yes.
believe it was on National Geographic, but it's on Hulu now. Well, that doesn't need to be anything but a limited series, but because it was 8 episodes, the depth that I got into of understanding the history,
Mhm.
understanding Meep, understanding her marriage, understanding really what it was like to be in hiding. We wouldn't have had that. And then
Right,
Fellow
right,
Travelers. I loved Fellow Travelers so much, but it's not meant to go on forever because it's a
right,
slice of history. And,
right,
and it could have been a movie, I guess, but I don't know that it would have been as rich as it was
right.
as a limited series. So that's another space where I
Yeah,
feel like I'm sad that I feel like we're going to lose slices of history that can be told in a richer way than in a 2 hour movie. Because and look, the pendulum will swing. We will come back around to loving limited series, I hope. But
yeah.
I'm flying the flag today for a limited series.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Going back to kind of back to when you were seeing this, you mentioned this when you were wanting to direct and coming out of the lab. One of the things that that we really like, or that our listeners and our community seem to always come back to, and you touched on one with financing, is two topics: pitching and financing. And as young entrepreneurs or young creatives starting out in the industry, how you found those two categories, and then and now kind of looking back, what advice would you give in those areas of how do they refine their pitches, how do they, and then if they're lucky enough, then how do they start working on financing? Is there anything that's really stuck out for you in those categories?
I can speak more to the topic of pitching than I can to financing because the last few things that I've done have been within a studio system in which I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to worry about finding the finance. I had to figure out how are we spending the money, but not
Okay. Okay.
finding the money. I will say about pitching, I would say talk to people who are doing it because even I, who've been in this business for over 20 years, I mean, it's like 25. Like I've been in this business a very, very long time. And pitching keeps shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And even in this current 2024 iteration, I've had to talk to people and be like, wait, how like everything's like on Zoom now. And I am somebody who loves being in a room. who loves the idea of looking people in the eye, feeling the vibe, feeling the energy. Oh, I'm going to bring up this part of the pitch because I can tell I sense an opening, or they're maybe getting bored. I'll bring this down. Like I'm constantly titrating
Hmm.
in a way in these boxes. I don't love it, but I'm hearing that's what people want to do and that buyers are preferring it. So then I had to really, by talking to other friends who are writers, go, what are you doing? Because I think I need to learn. I think I really,
Okay.
so I think constantly realizing that the culture of pitching shifts all the time. And
Mm.
I certainly cannot assume that the way I would have pitched something, a year ago, 5 years ago, would be how to do it now. And if you can't talk to people and learn, I'm having to learn how to like put your document. I'm doing this like now, put your document up by the camera so it looks like you're just talking when you're really reading me, just all these technological things that we would not have even been thinking about before. um yeah, that would be my greatest advice. And I guess the old adage about keeping it short,
Yeah.
keeping
Yeah.
it certainly to 20 minutes, which is terrible for me. I could talk for 20 minutes about what's in my purse right now. Like I
So
talk
you need a
a lot.
podcast. You're
Oh
you're
my god, I don't know, I
talking
think I
about
would just run my mouth.
when you're pitching now to, because they're not, in the old days we were like, oh, when you pitch to the studios, or when you pitch to, there are now these media conglomerates. So do you, and we keep going back to the limited series versus the movie versus this, when you're pitching to a, well, just Disney, because you mentioned Hulu. So when you're pitching to, the Walt Disney Company an idea, are they then saying, okay, this is Hulu, this is Disney Plus, this is a theatrical, this is, whatever, I don't even know what their television network is called, a freeform. Do you have a look into that, or are they then saying, okay, we love this idea and it will become one of these five areas in our media conglomerate that we now have with Hulu and Fox and Disney, and how are you kind of, how do you pitch differently because of that?
Well, very interesting stuff, because not only not only are you speaking of the conglomerates, there's also the fact that you're usually going through a producer who has a deal somewhere. So then
Mm,
so it gets defined by who you're producing with.
with
Like
okay,
right now, I currently have a producing deal at Universal. So
right,
that anybody, like let's say I wanted to produce a young writer, it would come through me so that we would automatically go to Universal. And then in our conversations with the studio, we would decide this is definitely feels like a Peacock show, or this
okay,
belongs on broadcast on NBC, or we have this relationship with HBO, let's go to them. And you kind of decide before you go out.
mm-hmm.
But also, I think some of it is beyond your control. And I think
Okay,
all you can do is go in with the absolute, the a version of the pitch with that you can pitch with such verve and energy and passion and confidence, and then let them kind of decide. And I
agree.
think in the question and answer part of a pitch is where you can say, hey, what are you guys hearing in this? Because I felt like this really should live at NBC. That's what I was
Right.
dreaming of when I was writing it, but I'd love to
Okay.
hear your thoughts, and just kind of invite the conversation. At the end of the day, it's going to end up being decided by things that probably the young writer is not going to have any control over, because it
Where it
has to
fits,
do
what it,
with
yeah,
you know Peacock as a whole here, or Hulu
yep,
has a whole there, and they need something in their schedule. It has nothing to do with you. But I think you let people know what you want, and I think you also look savvy to invite people into the conversation and to say, I'm curious what you guys see, where you think this could live, because I see this and I see that. And also
mm,
to let people know my dream is this and why. My dream
yeah,
is that this lives on HBO, and why. That
okay,
that
that's
can
great
also
advice.
help inform, but you can't control it. All you can do is literally just kind of throw everything you have in your heart at it, and just be in conversation with people about it.
That is great advice. Great advice. I think that is, and it is, like you said, it's ever changing. It's ever changing. I want to talk now about like some of the things you have coming right now. So we've talked about, From Scratch and Little Fires Everywhere, and you were involved with When They See Us with Ava. So it's your sixth book, right? Your sixth novel that has just come out, and
Yeah.
you're adapting with Tembi.
Yes, yes. She and I are doing the reverse of from scratch. So
Right,
together
right.
we adapted her book, and now we're going to adapt my book.
With
And
Bluebird.
it's kind of fun and amazing because in both instances, we're able to see things that the person who wrote the book isn't thinking of.
Okay.
So Tembi will pitch ideas that I'm not thinking of because I'm in the lane of kind of what I wrote, and she'll come
Mhm.
out of left field with something or an article that she read, like, oh, we could fold this, and I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. So that's kind of like super super fun, and I'm very excited about the prospect of this adaptation. And I go back to things that we said earlier. What you have to do going into these things is say to yourself, well, what I wrote always lives on a shelf. No one can undo it. So we get to
Mhm.
play with this. We get to have
Okay.
fun, let it be its own kind of new thing. Celeste Ng was that way about Little Fires Everywhere. And she had the best way of putting it. She said, it's like you guys are doing a cover of my book, like a cover song, and I've
Right,
got my
right.
original recording and it's all good, and it's cool that you guys are doing like a cover of it,
I love
and
that. I
that's
love
fun because I
that.
think of like one of the most famous songs in the world, Aretha Franklin Respect. That was a cover of an Otis Redding song, and it
Right.
has its own identity. So it's just that's to me that's the way to think of an adaptation, that you're not
Mhm.
ever doing a literal translating of every single beat that was in the book. You're trying to capture the feeling of the book. The it's You're trying to bottle up its essence and find a way through lighting and casting and costuming and sets to give somebody what they felt like
Uh-huh.
when they put that book down.
That has to be such an amazing feeling to see it all come to life right in front of you. And because it obviously is in your head and it's done it, but then like you said, all of these people putting their, putting their thoughts and putting their the symphony together for you to see it. That has to be such an amazing feeling to see it all in 3D right in front of you. I love that. When Now tell us about you also. It was just in the trades not too long ago about riffs and refrains. Now I was looking for this and I couldn't find it. Are Ty and Keisha sisters?
I don't think so. No.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, is this sisters and
No,
sisters?
no, that would be amazing,
And I
but
couldn't
no,
find it, and I
no.
was like, it didn't say sisters, so I didn't think they were. But I was like, wait, are they? I didn't know if they were related as well because I thought that was going to be even greater. So tell us a little bit about that, about how that
It
came about.
is it is a story about it's kind of like a love letter to black country music,
Uh
and
huh.
and the roots of the blues within it. And so there's like a kind of Tim and I were almost calling it a Empire meets Nashville meets This Is Us, because
Okay.
there's a
Okay.
family secret
Family
at the
story. Uh huh.
center of it, but we're also watching a woman step into her own family's legacy around music and being brave enough to literally find her voice. And then
Hmm.
there's like a love story, and then there's some soapy stuff. And so we're kind of looking to have a good time with it as Texans. Like we kind of grew up with, when Cowboy Carter, Beyonce's album
Yeah.
came out, I think there are a lot of Black Texans who are like, yeah, duh, like that, yeah. We've been kind of knowing that that's a part of our
Hmm.
culture and our music, and her Beyonce putting out that album deeply legitimized
Hmm.
um, the experience of these musical genres all mixing, and the
Right.
fact
Right.
that country's roots, yeah, I call country and blues fraternal twins, and they're deeply connected. So I think we're kind of tickled by the idea of being able to explore the music, look at this part of our identity, and
Hmm.
all through the lens of a kind of soapy family drama. And I look forward to one of the funnest things about Empire and Nashville. I was a big fan of Nashville. I
Yeah.
watched
Yeah.
every episode, even when it moved to the CMT. I still have some of the songs on my phone. I still have a lot of Empire songs on my phone. So I look forward to when we get to the place where we're actually talking about the making of the music, watching, creating story about making songs, and
Uh
then
huh.
actually making songs that then have a life, in Apple Music, Spotify, like out in the world.
When you and Tembi are working together and looking at projects, how how has it been? You know, you like you said, you had from scratch. You've got your Bluebird. You have your books, and now you have riffed at somebody else's. Is it seamless to go back and forth to someone else's original, original project, and to your something that was one of yours? Is how does that? How do you work differently or the same with other people's stories versus your own?
I think what's the same about it is you're going in and you're the thing I said before, you're mining for the book's essence. I think
Uh,
because we are writers, we have a kind of base level respect for the work that goes into creating an original story. I think our biggest challenge, honestly, is the pivoting between projects. Because
the having
if
to.
I had my druthers, I would only do one thing and I would just totally sink into it, and that's all I would be doing. But we are deeply in development. So there is this kind of 3 days on here, and then let's pivot. We'll spend the morning on this, and then we pivot to a different project. And so sometimes that feels a little kind of head spinny.
Uh-huh.
But I think the through line there is us. I mean, we just have a dynamic and a partnership that allows for being able to pivot between projects, because somewhere underneath it all, in all of these projects, are family stories, stories of love.
Mhm,
Timby and I are both about bringing joy into the world to
mhm.
the degree that we can. So the through line becomes our value system and the ways in which all of these projects touch on that value system. And so that's what kind of becomes the thread that we're following.
I'm curious, you mentioned that your parents were lawyers and business owners, and they have these two creative daughters and the whole career. So do you have other siblings that like followed the family line, or are you guys?
No, we're all kind of different. So from my mom and dad's marriage, it's just me and Timby, and then
Okay,
my dad remarried and has three sons, uh, two of whom are very creative. One is a musician. Um, One is an actor, sometimes actor. He doesn't do it probably as much as he would like to. And then my third brother has like I think he has a master's in like sociology. So
okay.
totally different
So
kind of
all over
experience.
the thing. I was like,
Yeah.
are these two very business oriented, but directing and producing, like you said, there's I mean, there's a business side to it that you
Yeah.
guys are, yeah, that you have to, but like wildly successful creative children coming from a very biz type A parents.
And they were always, we're very lucky that they said, okay, we could have had parents that went, no, you're not doing that.
Right,
But our
right.
parents always went, okay. And not just as kids, putting us, all of us were in theater programs as kids.
Okay.
All of us were doing summer workshops and just, we said we were into doing that. They gave us opportunities to do that. But then
Uh-huh.
when we got to school and said, oh, ha, 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 it's not just a summer thing I'm doing at 7 and 8. I actually now want to major in film.
Yeah.
They said, okay, my dad, for just a little bit, was still talking about me going to law school. And I looked at him one day and I said, I'm like a junior now. I think we need to stop this because I'm not going to law school. And he went, okay. We never got real pressure.
Right,
And
right.
it's so funny when I think about our show from scratch. When we look at the characterizations of our parents,
Uh-huh.
people are always like, God, oh, your mom seems like so kind of crazy in that movie. Was she really like that? And I feel like people are so hard on the mom in because we're all hard on moms. Whereas
Right.
actually the portrayal of my dad, and I love Herschel as a character, and I love Keith David as the actor who
Uh-huh.
did it, but our dad was not that mean about it.
Uh-huh.
That character in From Scratch was like, you are going to law school, and what are you doing? And our dad was not that pushy about it. And we
You
were very
always have to say,
lucky that,
okay, Dad, don't take offense to this. You were not like this.
yeah, both of our parents were just very much like, okay, okay, well, let's figure it out then, if this is what you really want.
That's beautiful. No, that's probably why as yeah, as you said, you were, and I think back of you being 24, 25, and going through that, and I'm like, oh, looking back, you're a baby, but able to navigate that and make those changes and do those things because you had that base, you had that, that strong acceptance and that family support that was there. That's such a gift. And I know we never see it as 23, 24 year olds. We don't see it in the moment, but looking back, we see, what all of those gifts meant to us as we're going through these, good times
Yeah.
and bad times. I know
There were
we're almost
many
out
a
of
time.
time. Oh my gosh, this has gone
Oh,
so
yeah.
fast. It's so much fun to meet you, Attica. I want to hear, what are you watching? What are you reading? What are you loving right now that we can, books, music, streaming,
Well,
movies.
I am embarrassed to say that right now I was loving Love is Blind UK. I was, maybe
Don't
I
be
shouldn't
embarrassed.
say
You will
embarrassed.
not believe
No,
how
no, no, I
many
take it back.
times
No
Love
embarrassment.
Island comes up, The
Yeah, no,
Bachelor
I
comes
love Love
up.
is Blind UK, but the books that I've read recently that have knocked my socks off, James by Percival Everett. I
Right?
just
Oh,
loved that book. Long Island Compromise. I
yeah, I love that
loved
one.
that book. I'm reading a book right now about migration to Sicily called The Silence of the Choir, which is incredibly beautiful. Um, I read a book called In My Time of Dying by Sebastian Younger that was really moving. I have discovered the Teskey brothers, who are these Australian guys who sing the blues. Love these guys.
Okay.
I discovered, oh no, not why Danielle. No, no, I'm gonna die if I don't remember her name. Huh. Well, this may not work out if I can't remember her name. Danielle Ponder.
Daniel
Danielle
Ponder.
Ponder. I've discovered her that I love. Yes. So right now I feel like I've been on a downbeat with that's been a lot of reality TV. There are a couple I just need to start and I just haven't started.
Uh-huh.
But I probably don't tell anybody read more than I watch TV. Um, I just do, and I just do.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. Oh, Attica, it was so nice meeting you. Oh my gosh, this has been such a fun conversation, and you have given so much great advice and so many little nuggets that I know our audience and our community are going to love. So thank you for your time, and it
Oh,
was so
great to
nice
meet
to meet
you.
you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. This was delightful, and I hope helpful to someone out there. Yes.
Absolutely. All right, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womeninentertainment.com.